I can't remember because I remember covering you when you were in the Final Four when I covered the women's basketball tournament. Did you guys ever play against North Carolina?
Yes, I played against North Carolina my final home game in the Elite Eight to advance to the Final Four.
Okay, the reason I bring that up is Sylvia Hatchell, longtime head coach at North Carolina, is stepping down after a North Carolina review. Ravon Hatchell made racially insensitive comments, and maybe there were also some reports that she pushed people to get back from injury faster than she needed to be. Sylvia Hatchell is a woman that has over 1,000 wins on her resume and has a national championship. What did you make of when you heard this story?
I honestly think, and I lean on my experience with Coach Tara Vanderveer, Hall of Fame coach from Stanford. One thing that Coach Tara has done, the game has changed. It's funny, there's a difference between myself and my younger sisters who are 21 and 23. Like, we grew up without technology, you know how that is, and they grew up with technology. The way we treat young, athletes, we sort of put them on a pedestal. They consider themselves bigger than themselves, largely because of social media and the following that they get at a young age. The game has changed, and coaches have to adapt to that change, right? Student athletes have to be catered to in a way that they haven't been catered to before. You know what it is like? We went through it. Like, when I was in college, we did a lot of sprinting. We had to deal, there were some mental issues, mental issues, just trying to overcome that level of rigor. Because UNC, like Stanford, like Notre Dame, like Baylor, these are all esteemed programs, and they're rigorous programs. And for a long time, we've considered our coaches to be parental type of figures, and anything they says goes, even if that feels like it's pushing you beyond your boundaries, right? The game has changed, and I learned this firsthand. My coach, Coach Tara Vanderveer, has changed her approach to recruiting and to mentoring just to make sure that she is reaching the young student athletes, right? If there's anything along the nature of racism or those type of epithets happening, that's a no-go no matter what time you're in. Right. But even now, I think student athletes feel like they have the ability to call out coaches for situations like this because it's rightfully unfair, right?
Right.
So I am very sad to see her amazing career get ended, so abruptly. But at the same time, I think coaches are realizing that they have to adapt to the needs of student athletes because we're not here to just be serviceable, engines to your program. We are human beings as well.
Yeah, they're not going to just be cogs in the machine anymore. And I think what you're saying, there are two separate conversations.
Correct.
Yes. If things did cross the line there with the things that we're saying, because we've seen that in the past. We remember back Mark Mangino and those teams at Kansas and all the fallout from a lot of what happened there before his ousting, centered around things being said that cross a clear line. And like you said, that's timeless.
That's a no-brainer.
That line has always existed. But for everything else, this idea of maybe playing through or borderline injured, playing through certain areas where before you're right, you sucked it up and
we
did
never
it.
had a voice.
And
we
no.
never felt bigger. Like, number one, as a student athletes, we wanted to feel like we had control of our bodies, right, guys?
Yeah.
And
well, don't look at me.
We did, but I feel
hey,
like
I was an intramural king. Let me tell you.
Hey, rec league
Flag
legend.
football.
But
right?
isn't there a fine line of and really a lot with a head injury nowadays they take no chances on. But there's a fine line of the athlete wants to be on the court. Sometimes the athlete has to be saved from themselves because I know from Mike's standpoint of getting on the field at Notre Dame, it's like, okay, and I had that too. And then in the NFL, if I didn't stay on the field, I wasn't getting back on the field. So you're willing to play through some things to stay on the field.
It is absolutely a delicate balance, and I found myself guilty, and I learned the hard way. Like, I decided I had some, issues when I was drafted, and I played that first year professionally, and I was like, I want to be Rookie of the Year, I want to be an All-Star, and all these great things, and then I pushed myself to the point of injury, right? And that's because we have these expectations, and we feel like it's normal and that we're going to be fine. There has to be a system in place where student athletes feel safe enough to say, hey, I am not feeling good today, and your coaches have to be receptive to that. One game does not matter in the scheme of a season. Like, I don't care how big that game is because I feel like athletes need to be able to feel comfortable expressing how they feel and what they're going through. For such a long time, we sucked it up. But now that's not happening, rightfully so, and coaches have to learn how to adapt.
I think the best thing that happened to that end was the information age because now you see so much of player tracking, and that idea is monitoring it for health and wellness. It's, all right, how many miles did this guy log at practice today? What was his peak output?
What was his heart rate?
Yes, and they measure all these things constantly so that they can take that along with them talking to players and say, all right, how is this guy feeling? Maybe we do need to dial back his workload. So I think the more of that we get that's given to coaches, the better decisions everyone can make.
And coaches are learning. We no longer do all those sprinting type of drills in basketball. We're realizing our conditioning has to come off of, non-impact machines.
Right, right.
It's been a slow progression, and some coaches have been at the head of this change, but some coaches have sort of stuck to their ways, and they're getting hurt by it.
At the end of the day, I think coaches need to realize you need to reach your players where they are. And the players are finding they have more of a voice and more power, especially in college athletics, than we've ever seen before.